when did you first go to sea?
25th of August 1942 as a galley boy.
Yeah, well, what was your first ship?
Norwegian ship called the John Backy of Haugesund.
Yeah, what type of ship was that, mate?
5-hatch dry cargo ship.
Right.
And we took a full load of bagged wheat to the UK.
Yeah. How old were you?
15 and a half.
15 and a half. Right. Some blokes say this is a hard question, but what made you go to sea? Why did you want to go to sea?
I always fancied going to sea, but there was 3 or 4 mates all got jobs in Norwegian ships around that time, and I thought, well, here's a chance to go. So I did. They went as deck boys and engine boys, and that the only thing that was left for me was a bloody galley boy. And I thought, well, if I didn't want it really, but if you were going to knock it back, the consul would have probably said, well, you're not interested, I won't call you again, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I took it, and although it wasn't my ideal, it was the best thing I ever did, because that set me off for a life at sea.
Yeah. So what then was your last ship?
The Iron Kirby,
Yeah.
BHP.
And when was that? When did you finish up?
I finished in her and paid off in the Port Kembla on the 24th of April 1990.
Right. On your first ship that you said, what would have been the size of the crew on her?
All in, counting the gunners, 4 gunners, was about 42 or 43.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
She wasn't a big crew because she was a motor ship, so where you don't normally have 15, 16 men down below, we only had 8 or 9.
Yeah.
Yeah. But she had a good 14 or 15 on deck.
What were some of the conditions like when you started?
Well, they're pretty basic. As a matter of fact, that the Norwegians' accommodation was a lot better than what it was on the coast. The majority of it was 2-berth cabins. The first ship, fair enough, it was a 3-berth cabin. There was myself, the galley boy, the saloon boy and the officer's mess boy together, because it was originally the bosun's cabin, but the bosun decided to go and live midships where we would have been living, and he went up there into a 1-berth cabin, and the 3 boys were stuffed together in a 3-berth cabin down aft. But it was a good cabin. It was livable, but it wasn't what was like when we finished up.
What sort of hours did you used to work then?
Well, the galley boy started off at 6 o'clock in the morning, and you worked right through then till 3 o'clock in the afternoon. After lunch you scrubbed the galley and got everything ready, and had the coffee ready for coffee at 3 o'clock, and the cook was on his rest period, and at 3 o'clock the cook turned out to start preparing supper, and you had your break then from 3 till 5. You came back at 5 to dish up for, as the Norwegians called it, supper. 5 o'clock.
What about the wages? Do you remember what they would have been?
Yeah, in today's money, $10 a month.
Yeah, right.
79 crowns, Norwegian crowns, which was in the old was about 25 bob a week, 25 shillings a week, which I was getting. That was what I was getting when I was working ashore here anyway, in the as a boy in the wool industry. So there was no difference then. But the beauty was, Norwegians considered every man aboard the ship of equal value, and from the captain down, we all got exactly the same war bonus.
Yeah.
Whereas in Australian ships, and I'm, as far as I know, Pommy ships, the further down the scale you went, you were on a percentage of what it was. So the deck boy, his life wasn't as valuable as the AB or the old man, but a Norwegian ship, everybody got exactly the same war bonus, which was 250 crowns a month.
Yeah. So what sort of time would you have in port to load or to discharge? How long in port?
Oh, well, when I joined her, we sailed about 2 days later. She was just loading some wool here. Then we went to Adelaide and discharged the wool into a Russian ship, and we loaded tallow in big barrels into the lower hold, and then when we put that end down there, we went round to Wallaroo and took a full load of bagged wheat. But in number 3 tween deck, we had mail for the UK and bundles for Britain and things like that. It was more or less a full cargo of bagged wheat.
Mm. And how long would that take to load?
We were there about 3 weeks loading.
Yeah.
She was loading off the pier, and as well, it's the first time I'd seen it, ketches came from the little ports in the Gulf, and we loaded out of them on the seaward side. You'd have maybe 1 or 2 ketches loading besides you're loading off the trains on the pier.
What was the food like then?
It was all right. It was much different to what I was used to. It was a lot of fish, and you only got one dish. If you didn't like the dish that was on, well, you had to starve. It wasn't like we got used to here, like wanting this and wanting that. You got what you were given, and that was it. But the food was good. It was wholesome, and there was plenty of. I would say in those Norwegian ships, we was never short of filling you up. You could fill up on what was sent down.
What sort of basic items were provided? You know, like soap and linen and all that sort of stuff.
Well, you got you didn't get sheets, but it was like a doona cover that you get today. That's the first time I'd ever seen one. You put your blankets in it like a doona cover, and so that was your sheet in your top sheet, and there was no showers. The only shower was salt water shower, but you were given a bucket. So for 2.5 years, that's the only thing we washed out of was a bucket. But I'll tell you what, when you start to learn how to use a bucket properly, they were cleaner blokes. A lot of blokes I've seen here using the shower or not using the shower. So you had to buy your own soap and things like that. But, well, if you don't know any different, it's accepted, you know, and that was it.
You must have met a lot of characters over your time at sea, Peter.
I met some characters, all right. Some of them were better left unsaid. But yeah, our first shipmates, when he did his first trip to sea, Frank Hardy, the great power without glory, he came in the car cooler when I was in her. And I noticed there in the notes that Ron Hurd. Now Ron Hurd was a character. He was a veteran of the International Brigade in Spain. Fought against Franco, and he was an official in the West and a good official. And what I found of him, a good fella too. And I used to have a beer once in a while with EV when I was in the Coringa and have a little talk about where we were going, and that people in other unions were very surprised that a rank and file member could go and have a drink of beer with a federal official, because they said it just, in the Metal Trades Union and a lot of others, it just didn't happen. You were lucky to get to talk to the branch secretary, let alone the federal secretary. But as I said, well, that's the way the Seaman's Union is. That's our democratic way of being there. Yeah.
What about some of the hits or the near misses that you went through?
The what?
The hits or the near misses, the big, you know.
Oh, yeah, well, see, when I first came on the coast, Coolana was my first job on the coast, the Melbourne company, and that was when I hadn't proceeded, because she was a 3-berth cabin ship as well, and that was a mess boy, Peggy, the Bucko, and the day work AB in the same cabin, and the mess room had been a part of the twin deck bunkers up midships, and they just put a bulkhead in one end of it and converted the after end of the bunkers into a mess room. And it was all right, but it was sort of the sort of things that you accepted then, because it was an improvement on what you'd had. So, as Karl Marx always said, hasten slowly, and we were hastening very slowly.
Well, what about some of the, like, if we ever involved in any incidents at sea, any stories there you want to tell us? Or over ships, or anything that nearly went wrong, or that did go wrong?
Well, I was in the low end, and we never had a blue, but we went up and we had explosives on deck. And anyway, the delegates went up and said, well, that, you know, we should be getting an allowance for carrying explosives. And they said, no, you've only got X amount of explosive there, and it doesn't warrant any danger money, because it's not dangerous. So I said, oh, well, fair enough. That's what the award reads. And before we got to Portland, the whole bloody lot had blown up. And we went into Portland to shelter. It was, I forget what, but when it got water into it, it exploded. And anyway, went to Portland, and they radioed back to the company, and overnight they said, well, go to sea, and dumped the lot over the side. So that's what we did. And when we got to Fremantle, there was explosive money in our pay. They decided that it was, you know, worth something. It was only 10 bob, but it was, in those days, 10 bob was 10 bob. Oh, and I was in the Goulburn, coming from Hobart. We run a bit short of bunkers, and we went in behind Deal Island and anchored. Well, my wife, I was not long married at the time, and my wife heard on the radio that they'd heard weak signals from one of Huddard Parker's ships in distress. Well, we never knew anything about it. But anyway, when we got here, what it turned out, it was one of Parker's ships, the Adelon, was coming from Port Huon up out, and she'd run onto a rock on the side of the channel, and she wasn't badly damaged, but she'd radioed that she would need a tug, and they got the paper as usual, got it mixed up between the Goulburn and the Adelon, but we were safe and sound, catching a few fish at Deal Island. It was the Adelon that was in bother, not us.
Well, we were on the Noongar, Pete, on the Coringa when the Noongar sank. Remember when we went looking for the survivors?
Yeah. That's right, yeah.
69.
Yeah.
What was the stop work meetings like in the early days then?
They were good. They were always, and all the years that I was a member of the union, they were good because the majority of people went to the stop work meeting, and there was plenty of discussion from the floor when it came to general business. Some secretaries were better than others. I remember one in particular in the West. I'm just trying to remember. Desi Dans, to me, was one of the best officials you could ever have to present a federal report, because as far as I'm concerned, anybody who ever got up and asked a question after Dancy had read the federal report was an idiot, because he explained everything as it went. And I chaired a lot of stop work meetings in Western Australia, and he was, to me, all right. He mightn't have been the most super militant official, but he was a good, fair dinkum official.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You must have seen a lot of disputes over the years, like Utah, the Vietnam moratorium.
Yeah, Utah, and the Vietnam stoppages.
Was there any, like even at a shipboard level, can you tell us some that you were
Oh,
involved
there
in?
was
Too many to remember.
Past,
Yeah.
There wasn't a meeting about something.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, that's how I met my wife. It was Christmas, and she was ready to sail, going to sail that afternoon, so we all adjourned to the pub, and it was a coal burner, so we just washed the ashes out of our throat before we sailed. But while we were there, we decided that seeing it was Christmas, it would be better if she stayed in Melbourne and be at sea between Melbourne and Hobart. So we went back, but the old man had already seen that what had happened, so he said, put her back till 8 o'clock in the morning. Said, she'll never get away tonight, which we never, but in the morning, Tom Holliman, who was the superintendent, he came down the wharf to see why his ship hadn't sailed, so we sent the fireman's delegate along to talk to him, and we convinced him that it was in everybody's interest if the ship stayed there till Monday morning, and we all had Christmas at home, and then we'd sail on Monday morning, which was Boxing Day, and you used to get an extra day's pay for sail on Boxing Day. But Tom Holliman, he agreed, but he forgot about Boxing Day, see? And as the delegate was walking up the gangway, and Tom was walking down the wharf, he yelled out to the "Hey Jack, you get no bloody EDP for Boxing Day, you know?" I said, "That's all right."
Yeah.
But you would never ever, well, it wouldn't enter your head now, I don't think, to stick a ship up for Christmas, just to stay home for Christmas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it was...
But what do you reckon the relationship were between the seagoing unions? Did you ever have any trouble like that?
Not really.
Or,
I mean, there was always somebody didn't like the second, or somebody didn't like the mate or something, but I never ever saw anything that was... The cooks and stewards really had to live together and work together, and that. I mean, all right, firemen would be crooked on some of the ABs would be crooked on firemen, and stupid arguments like that, but I don't really recall being any animosity. You might say, oh, the bloody engineers didn't do this, or the mates didn't do that, but it wasn't sort of open warfare. It was... We've all got, to me, we're all living in the, as you say, we're all in the same boat. Well, you've got to live with it, don't you?
Yeah.
We all had the same enemy. Some couldn't see it that way, but it was there.
Ship owner was our common enemy.
That's right.
That's pretty much all the questions, Peter.
No. Well, you're missing one very important one. What was it like firing on a coal burner?
Oh, yeah, all right.
Hot. Hot and dirty.
Yeah.
But, well, there's one thing about it. You were fit. It kept you fit. But the straight out firing part of it, all right, there was good jobs and there was bad jobs. I think I was lucky that the majority of the coal burners iron were considered pretty good jobs. But the worst part was doing tubes and back ends, cleaning the boiler, when you had to climb up the back of the furnace and get the ashes out the combustion chamber. That was hot and shit work. But the coal burners, at least what would I say, the dirt that you got in your flannel and your dungarees, you could put it in a bucket and wash it out. But it wasn't all the motor ships when you were doing scavengers and things like that with the burnt oil and grease. It never got out of anything. The coal burners actually were a better life than the motor ships when it came down to.
When you used to load your bunkers, your coal bunkers.
Yep.
How long would that take? What was involved in that?
Well, the wharfies did that. See, the coal gangs, and they generally do it in a day. You could go to Newcastle, where they used the cranes, and they'd whack it in no time. But in places like Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, and that, where the coal lighters, it was all done with baskets, and I think it was 500 weight, or to a basket, and when you tallied the baskets were tipped in, and you'd mark it there. They'd send a trimmer up to tally it because they didn't trust the wharfies. But the wharfie knew. You'd go and ask him, how much, what you reading, mate? And he'd tell you, and you'd say, oh yeah, that's the same as me. I mean, you weren't going to put shit on him.
Yeah.
He knew what he was doing. And but you'd put out 4 strokes that went through. There was 5 baskets, so the engineer did say, all right, we've had 500, 600 baskets, and they'd know how much and tally with what they gave you. But you usually bunk it in a day.
The old Polly Woodside was one of the bunker lighters down here.
She was the last one,
Yeah.
the Rona. Yeah. Oh, they were professionals, those coal trimmers on the lighters. They were very professional. And that's all they did. Most of them came from Montague, and they called them the Montague Mafia. But they were good blokes, real good blokes. Yeah.
Is anything you want to add yourself? Anything that you particularly want to say? I mean,
see, I've been retired since before amalgamation, so I haven't had any experience like as the MUA. But I mean, was the stewards and the cooks had already amalgamated by the time I left, and it was something that had to be. And I always, even before I came on the coast, I could always see that you had to have an affiliation with the waterfront workers, whether they be wharfies or dockies or anything else. It was better to be amalgamated than arguing with them. And all this bloody blues that used to go on about demarcation and as Billy Bird always said, every job aboard a ship, from the truck to the keel, is a seaman's work. What we let other people do, it's not their work, it's something that we're letting them do. But it got to the stage there, and some parts over the years, and the dockies just said, well, that's our work, and they claimed it as their work. Well, half of it was work that we weren't very flash about doing anyway, but no, I think that overall it's been an advancement, and I got no doubt in my mind that if we hadn't have amalgamated, there wouldn't be a Seamen's Union today, because you only got to look at what they're doing to us now, about flagging ships out. And
You've got a son still at sea too, Peter.
yeah, he's boasting of well, he starts on the 21st of this month of boasting of number 1. He's just finished in the Spirit of Tasmania number 3, now he's going to Spirit 1. Yeah, I had another son, he was a dockie, but he died young. But he worked up the river for a little while, but he was mainly in the naval dockyard in Williamstown, and a docksider. But they're the only ones that were connected with the waterfront. Out of the 3 girls, they got nothing to do with Seaman, or married her, and my youngest son, he works at TNT Air Freight. So, but I'm still proud that my eldest bloke followed my footsteps.
Yeah. Okay, well.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, well, my great-grandfather, Robert McCracken, he was a skipper of his own ship, and he first went to sea in the Maid of Erin out of Hobart in 1800 and something, and he was away 2 years whaling, and he got his second mate's ticket or whatever they got in those days, and then further down the track they had their own little, well, to me it'd be a ketch because it was only a matter of a few hundred ton, but that was when they were living in Hobart, and he sailed into Geelong when there was only a stick in the mud to show the channel to get in there, and came up there. But they brought the first, the timber from Tasmania to build the first house in Collingwood, and they also brought granite from Tasmania that built the GPO in Melbourne. So, but that was the only forebear of mine that was seagoing, and he didn't stay at it because.
Yeah.
Do you remember the name of that ketch? Or?
No.
No.
It's somewhere. If you hang on whaling brig Marion, returning after 12-month voyage with a full ship. He was then taught navigation by Lieutenant Corbett, and in September 1838 sailed in a brigantine called the Adelaide for Port Phillip with Captain Smith, and after a fair passage arrived in Hobson Bay. The only means of finding the mouth of the Yarra in those days was a large stake driven in the mud, after finding of which they performed the marvellous feat of taking 2 days to get up the river as far as the bottom of William Street, and they had to walk their way in consequence of the trees preventing them spreading their sails. Yeah.
So he was 18.
He was 18 when he went to sea.
Yeah.
Yeah, they brought him from Spring Bay. Yeah, he started a Victorian meat preserving company. Yeah, my old grandfather, he he jumped into Stony Creek. There was 2 kids playing on the wharf in 1875 or something, and they fell in the drink, and he jumped in and fished them out, and he got a Royal Humane Society silver medal for getting it out, and was the 8th medal that was presented, because previously there was the Royal Humane Society, but then they changed it to the Royal Australasian Humane Society, so it incorporated Australia and New Zealand and